What's up, Duval? It is your favorite Jaguar, Bucky Brooks, and this is Believe in Jaguars, podcast dedicated to everything Jacksonville Jaguars. And today we are going to do a recap of the preseason. We'll talk a little bit about the preseason finale where the Jaguars absolutely mollywopped the Atlanta Falcons. But to be fair, the Falcons were playing their backups. Regardless, it was a great win. It showcased some of the things that we wanted to see from the Jaguars heading into the regular season and where they're going to take on the Miami Dolphins in week one. We got a couple weeks before that take place, so we'll talk about the things that will transpire before that week one tilt. But it's really important that we look back and just kind of talk about where the Jaguars started, how they finished in the preseason, and what other things they need to do to be the team that we want to see really get out the gates quickly the first quarter of the season. But before we do that, let's talk about our sponsor. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for everything football. From the preseason NFL to college kicking off, BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads while games are being played. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our winner-take-all 300,000 NFL Survivor pool for the upcoming season. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino, get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with our 150 slot games. Head to the website today. Use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV. Get in on the action. Bet online. The game starts here. I love the tagline, the game starts here, because the game does always start here. It starts in the preseason and it leads into the regular season, where we have a lot of hopes that the Jaguars are going to not only be a playoff team, but a team that can make a deep run in the postseason. But before you can make a deep run in the postseason, you got to make sure that your team is really attacking the preseason the right way. And based on the way the Jaguars look throughout the preseason, I absolutely can say that the Jaguars attacked the preseason the right way. And some of what I'm about to tell you comes from a series of conversations that I've had with Jaguars people over the last few weeks. Some of those have taken place in production meetings. Some of those have been private one-on-one conversations. But I will say that this team feels really, really good about where they are. I think there's a quiet confidence about this team and what they hope to accomplish. And last year's collapse could be the launching pad to what we think will be a great 2024 and 25 season, where the Jaguars fulfill some of the promises and expectations that surrounded the club a season ago. Let's talk about the club, and let's talk about the fallout from last season, but how it really led to a different approach this offseason. Whenever I've had the opportunity to talk to Coach Peterson, Doug has just talked about coming into the year, he felt like it was going to be about two things: change and development. Change in the way that the Jaguars went about doing things, development in making sure that the young players are developed and they're ready to play when they get their opportunity, and the coaches are willing to give the guys the opportunity when certain parts of the season, certain opportunities present themselves. The change in terms of the way the Jaguars were going about their business, there was a feeling, I would say, around the team that last year the team couldn't finish, just couldn't focus, couldn't finish, couldn't take advantage of the opportunities that were there. And consequently, they squandered, a division lead when they were sitting at 8-3, and then just fell apart down the stretch. To prevent that from happening again, there's been really a very intentional effort by the head coach to make things harder, tougher, clearer, more concise, and more detailed for the team. So when I talk about harder and tougher, he wanted to ramp up the demands on the team when it came to the practice demands, the expectations when it comes to preparing in the film room, weight room, on the practice field, all of those things. Not like he didn't emphasize those things before, but he was going to be a stickler for making sure that the details mattered and that everyone was really intent on dotting their I's and crossing their T's. That has been something that he's talked about. He's talked about it. You've heard the players talk about just attention to detail, urgency, operating quickly and efficiently, but make sure that they got the work done. Well, in thinking about that part of it, what the Jaguars have done from a practice standpoint is they made a practice practices harder, not only in OTAs and off-season workouts, but they made them harder by design in training camp. When you talk to Trevor Lawrence and some of the other players around the team, they just talked about how tough the camp has been. And so I asked Doug, like, what do you mean? Like, what is a tough camp? What does a tough camp consist of? You know, I'm an old school player. Doug's an old school player. Like those tough camps back then were 2-a-days, pads on, pads in the morning, pads in the afternoon. It's hot. It's miserable. You're really going and you're clacking all the time. In today's environment with today's CBA, you can't necessarily run a camp like that. But Doug has found a way to run what he considers a tough camp and what the players consider to be a tough camp. So the CBA rules say that you can only have like, 11 or 12 hour day. So the time they clock in the building to the time they leave, you only got 11, 12 hours to spend with them. They maximize all their time. They utilize all that time that they had with the players. They didn't give players excessive days off. They didn't shorten the meetings. They made them kind of grind through it in an effort to build kind of like a tougher mentality amongst the team. The other thing they did in terms of these long practices and these long days where they have meetings and those things is they upped the physicality in practice by taking advantage of all the padded days. And in the pros, sometimes what happened is you have a padded day and then you take the next day off, but you typically won't go multiple days in a row with pads because you're trying to preserve the players and make sure they're fresh and ready to go for the regular season. Yeah, Doug was like, no, we're not doing that. We're going to go back to old school. We're going to pad them up. We'll do it a couple of days in a row. We'll kind of grind on them a little bit. So in the end, the team will not only kind of embrace the physical element of the game and kind of get comfortable with the heavy contact, they almost walk away with some body armor feeling like they are the toughest team on the block. So when you're talking about running a tough camp and you talk about being a more physical team, it's really important that the actions match your words. And when I looked at the team and I hear about how the practices were conducted and how long and grueling the practices were, it had to make sense that they had more padded practices if you want to be a more physical team. When you think about the bullies and the heavyweights that are in the National Football League, like the San Francisco 49ers, like the Baltimore Ravens, those rough and tumble teams are rough and tumble because of how they get down in the practice during the practice week and how they enact and impose their will on teams on game day. Well, if the Jaguars are going to beat the bullies, they have to kind of add some of those bully tactics to their practice routines to be that team that they want to be in the end. Doug Peterson put it out there. The camp reflected it. And what I hear from the players is I hear those guys kind of respect and appreciate those things. So Trevor Lawrence and I had a conversation as part of a production meeting, and Trevor talked about the accountability piece and how they are mentally and physically tougher, and the long practices, the pads, the grind. Those words came out of his mouth, and how it was just really, really important that they had a great camp because they learned a lot. The physicality and the competitiveness between the offense and the defense has made the team a better team. You're here this frequently spouted about when you're around team sports. Iron sharpens iron. Well, the Jaguars feel like they are a better team because of the competitive nature of their practices, how physical the practice were, and how the ones went against the ones and made each other better. The preparation, the work every day, the way that they went about their business will make them a better team because that's what they believe in. The other part that the team believes in is, look, when the leaders are focused and locked in and come to work every day, then the rest of the team is going to follow their lead. When you watch the team and Trevor Lawrence is a worker bee and Josh Hines and Trayvon Walker are worker bees, Foye Oluokun is a worker bee, Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk are worker bees. When you have so many guys that are like that, that becomes the culture, that becomes the expectation, that becomes the environment that everyone operates in. And then other players see that and they kind of fall in line with that. And I say all that to say that being around the team in a few different capacities, the culture is different. The vibe is different around the team. We'll see if it leads to more success, but I can tell you it's different. There's just a different feel to the team. And I believe that it's certainly played out in the way the team has performed over the course of the preseason. When we had a chance to talk to Ryan Nielsen, the defense coordinator, I feel like he's really been responsible for a lot of things that we've seen take place in the preseason when it comes to how this team plays, how they perform, and those things. And he outlined for us a fanatical effort, running to the ball, the tackling, just the way that this team operates. They wanted to have a competitiveness about them that they were willing to face anybody, anytime, anywhere. And the reason why the preseason games were important to the Jags, not only offensively and defensively, but just the team in general, is because they want to win every game. Every time there's a competitive thing going on, whether it's a joint practice, a scrimmage, a preseason game, a regular season game, anything where people are keeping score, they wanted to show up and show out. And part of that mentality in terms of taking on anybody, anytime, anywhere is about making sure that it's always about them. As they say, it's about us. It's about us performing and playing to our standard. And whoever's the opponent, they're nameless, faceless opponents. But it's about us showing up, doing exactly what we need to do, playing how we want to play, and making sure that the Jaguars always impose their will on the opponent. When I look at the way this team played, particularly in this final preseason game, that's what it was, right? So there was a lot of conversation going into this game about are the starters going to play, who's going to play, how long they're going to play, what is it supposed to look like? Atlanta's pulling their guys, so how do you get up for that? This final preseason game was really a test of all those things that we talked about. Anybody, anytime, anywhere. Can you play the Atlanta Falcons at their place, even if they're not playing their starters, and still deliver the same kind of effort as if their number ones were on the field? Based on the way the game played out, yes, absolutely. The Jags were ready to play. They were ready to play from the jump. Trevor Lawrence and them jumped right on top of the Falcons' backups right away, and they dominated exactly like good teams dominate. And the reason why this is important, because in the last 2 years, we've seen this team kind of come out sluggish at times against opponents that they were clearly supposed to knock out. And it resulted in this team having to play games into the fourth quarter against opponents that they were, I would say, significantly better than. But when you show up in a preseason game and everyone says, hey, man, the starters are playing against the twos, well, you want to see what you saw from the Jaguars right away. Trevor Lawrence, right out the gate, 8 for 10, 91 yards, 2 touchdown passes, 6 yards and 5 yards to Evan Ingram. Boom, he's done. You saw them go and jump right on the Falcons with the first group. You saw a mix of run and pass. You saw the playmakers get involved. You saw Brian Thomas Jr. quickly involved in the action, and they were humming on offense. Run game, pass game. It was quick. It was efficient. It was very, I would say, it was dominant, and it was the kind of clean performance that you expect to see from your offense every time out. Knowing Doug Peterson, knowing his influences of Andy Reid and Mike Holmgren, there used to be a saying when we were all together in Green Bay, hey, man, the championship teams, the ball doesn't hit the ground. They operate with a level of efficiency that you just know that this is a championship team, and they execute at a championship level regardless of the opponent, regardless of the environment, regardless of the circumstance. That's what we were beginning to see from the Jacksonville Jaguars when you watch them in the preseason. And I know people will say, hey, man, the preseason doesn't count, but it certainly matters because the habits that you create in the preseason, they carry on into the regular season. It matters. It matters how they played. It mattered if they were living up to the standard. And it mattered in this game because they had a significant advantage, talent advantage over the Atlanta Falcons. And they did exactly what they were supposed to do to them. 31-0, knocked them out. Game was not close. It wasn't competitive. That's how it should be. Now, let's talk about the game itself and what we've kind of seen from the team as it relates to the preseason. Every time Trevor Lawrence has been in, Trevor Lawrence has looked really, really good with the offense. The offense is flowing. They're moving and shaking. Like there's a rhythm to it when Trevor is playing. And when all the pieces are available, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, BTJ, Gabe Davis, Travis Etienne, this offense is going to be one that if the offensive line holds serve, this offense should be able to score points because they have a few ways to be able to do it. They can push the ball down the field, Gabe Davis, Brian Thomas Jr., which is why both of those guys were brought over. They can run the football with Travis Etienne, hitting it between the tackles, on the edges. It appears that Tank Bigsby is going to be a nice playmate for him to tag him out on occasion, but still be able to run the same plays and make it happen. And then defensively, this is a team that has been suffocating opponents on the outside. And even though they may have some leakage early, they settle in, they control it, and dominate the action. And the conversion to more bump and run coverage, the conversion to a defense that is simpler and easy to understand, concise, clear, directives from the coaches, which allows the players to play fast and kind of make plays. You love it. And you love it because what they've said, offensively and defensively, they want it to be from an identity standpoint, from a culture standpoint. You see it play out in games. Love it. I believe it's important. I believe there's a crossover and carryover effect to it. And it's one of the reasons why everyone in Jacksonville should be really excited about the team, despite the daunting schedule that might be ahead. As it relates to the preseason and the game, the thing that I loved about watching them against the Falcons was, look, man, the stars continue to be the stars. The players continue to be the big time playmakers in the preseason. So I talked about Trevor Lawrence, like just going crazy and doing what he's consistently done when he's gotten the ball this preseason. How about the guys that have really been the stars of the entire training camp? And the guys who are, to me, the stars of training camp on offense, it comes down to the big three: Mac Jones, Parker Washington, Tank Bigsby. They've shown up, they've shown out, they've been terrific when they've had their opportunities. Mac Jones had an opportunity to play, 13 for 18, 113 passing yards, 1 touchdown, no interception, passer rating 106.9. Perfect, terrific, solid. Tank Bigsby had an opportunity to go 8 carries, 40 yards. That's 5 per clip, had a long of 14. Gotta like that. Parker Washington, 4 for 35, 8.8 per catch. He had 5 targets. But what he did is he made the plays that were expected of him. Yeah, Brian Thomas Jr. came in, made the big splashy play, which we like to see, 1 for 38. But the main guys that have been the stars throughout this preseason, Mac Jones, Parker Washington, Tank Bigsby, all showed up, showed out, really showed that, yeah, they might be the big three of the preseason, but man, there's a role for each of them to make contributions during the regular season. Just got to like what you're seeing from that group. And it goes back to what Doug talked about, change and development. Well, the change is, hey, let's change the way that we prepared. Let's change the way that we enact our process to get ready to play at a high level. I told you, long, grueling practices, more padded practices, more attention to detail, because there's a higher sense of accountability amongst the squad, from coaches to players, player to coach, like all of it. Like all of that is really working. Then you go from that part of it to looking at the defense and how the defense played, and everyone is flying around. They're making plays. You're excited about what is up front. And even though the stats don't reflect, I would say, like a dominant performance in terms of one guy stepping out, the team played really well. The unit played well. The collective, meaning not all the individual parts, but just how the unit played. There was a synergy. There was a chemistry and a cohesion to the defense. And that is what's really, really important about playing great defense in this league. Ryan Nielsen had talked about it. He talked about how they clearly do it. He credited Chris Richard and Matt House and the other coaches for getting their position guys ready to play. And I'll say this, it goes back to the top in terms of what Doug Peterson wants. I think he has done a great job of setting the tone for what his expectations are, what practice should look like, how they should operate when it comes to game day, which players should get the ball, and how they continue to earn opportunities with the ball. All those things have been laid out on the table, and we've seen it. And I think if you match what we've heard from Doug Peterson and the coaches in the press conference and look at what we've seen on the field, it matches. The actions match the words, which is why we should be excited about what is to come for the Jacksonville Jaguars this season. Final thing, cut down day is coming up tomorrow. The Jaguars have to get the roster down to 53. They can have a practice squad of up to 16 players. Varying degrees of experience can be put on that practice squad roster. There can be some tough decisions that we'll have to discuss when we have our next pod on Wednesday. who ends up being the number 2 quarterback. Is it Mac Jones? Is it CJ Beathard? I'm thinking Mac Jones is the one that has won the job based on how they perform, but you never know. We'll officially find that out in the next few days. Who is the 6th receiver? Is it going to be Tim Jones, Elijah Cooks? Special teams certainly plays a part. Who wins the job? Who are the surprise cuts? Who's going to be a guy that we thought was in but is not in? Typically, there's always a notable name that finds his way out of the locker room for circumstances that may or may not be within his control, but that's just the way the roster goes when you're trying to put the best 53 and the best additional 16 guys on a squad and on a practice squad. So we'll talk about all those things because it should be official 1:00 tomorrow. We'll know. And so we'll react on the composition of the 53. We'll begin to talk about what is going on over the next few weeks as the Jaguars begin to turn their attention to the Miami Dolphins and that track team that exists down there in South Florida. But we got enough time to talk about that until next time on Wednesday. We'll kick it off. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you tell a friend about what's going on in the Believe in Jaguars community. Look, this has been great. It's been a great connecting with you guys, offering feedback and perspective. And it's only going to get better because now that the games are on, I get a chance to resume my sideline duties. So I'll be right there behind the benches, looking at everything, talking to players, talking to coaches, talking to those guys throughout the week to kind of give you the best insight on what's going on with your favorite team. And so until next time, until Wednesday after the cuts and talking about the 53, I'm Bucky Brooks. I'm out. Look forward to chatting with you soon.